Bully poured Coca-Cola on 60-year-old black 4-star veteran wrong. Then this happened. The dark liquid slowly trickled down the white plastic table, dripping onto the McDonald's floor as 19-year-old Tyler Morrison held the empty cup with a satisfied smile. "Oops, too bad," he said, clearly without the slightest regret. "Lady, you shouldn't be taking up 2 tables when there are people who need to sit down." Retired General Patricia Williams, 60, watched as the soda destroyed her medical documents scattered across the table. 35 years of military service, 4 stars earned with blood and determination, commander of over 50,000 soldiers on 3 different continents. And now she was here, at the McDonald's on Interstate 75, trying to organize her late husband's health insurance papers. "Kid," she said in a calm voice that carried decades of natural authority, "do you have any idea what you just did?" Tyler laughed loudly, drawing the attention of other customers. "What, old lady? Are you going to cry over a Coke?" His friends from the college football team laughed along with him, some recording the scene with their cell phones. "Look at her, guys. She probably can't even read those papers." Patricia grabbed some napkins and began to dry the documents methodically, her movements precise and controlled. 40 years ago, she had defused bombs in Afghanistan with the same calculated patience. "Are you sure you want to continue down this path?" "Which path, Grandma?" Tyler leaned over the table, invading her personal space. "What are you going to do? Hit me with your imaginary cane." Laughter echoed through the restaurant as other customers looked down, clearly uncomfortable but too afraid to intervene. The manager of the establishment, a young Latina, approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" "Problem?" Tyler turned to her arrogantly. "The only problem is that this old woman is taking up half the restaurant with useless paper. Tell her to clear the table." Patricia folded the wet napkins with military precision and placed them in Tyler's empty glass. Her eyes, however, had that dangerous serenity that only someone who has commanded soldiers in a war zone can develop. It was the same look that had intimidated enemy generals in negotiating rooms, the same that had kept thousands of subordinates in line. "Young man," she said finally, her voice low but carrying an authority that silenced the entire restaurant, "you clearly have no idea who I am. And that," she smiled in a way that made Tyler recoil unconsciously, "is going to be a lot of fun." Tyler felt an inexplicable chill, but his youthful arrogance quickly masked any insecurity. "Wow, how scary," he said, turning to his friends. "Guys, this old lady is trying to intimidate me." What Tyler Morrison didn't know was that he was dealing with the only black woman to achieve 4 stars in American military history, an expert in psychological operations, holder of 15 Medals of Honor, and owner of a photographic memory for faces, names, and details that had saved countless lives in battle. If this story of prejudice and underestimation touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what happened next proved that some people learn the hard way that war veterans aren't just harmless old people. They're strategists trained to win any battle life throws their way. Tyler wasn't satisfied with just spilling the Coke. While Patricia methodically dried the wet documents, he pulled out his cell phone and started recording. "Guys, check this out," he said to the camera, filming the scene. "War veteran pretending to be important at McDonald's. How pathetic." "Tyler, man, maybe you should stop there," muttered Jake, one of his friends, clearly uncomfortable with a situation that was escalating beyond what was acceptable. "Stop? I'm just getting started." Tyler turned the camera on himself, striking that arrogant pose typical of a fifth-rate influencer. "Guys, you won't believe what I found here. An old lady who thinks she deserves respect just because someone said she was in the military." He laughed loudly, turning back to film Patricia. "I bet she can't even do a push-up." Patricia continued organizing her papers, but her military eyes were cataloging every detail. Tyler Morrison, State University t-shirt, approximately 6 feet 1 inch, tattoo on his right arm, high school graduation ring still on his finger. 40 years of training in military reconnaissance and intelligence were not easily erased. "You know what, Grandma?" Tyler leaned over the table again. "I think you should clean the floor too. Since you're down there anyway, picking up your wet papers." That's when Patricia looked up, and Tyler felt that chill again. For a moment, he had the strange feeling that he was being analyzed by something much bigger and more dangerous than he could comprehend. It was as if every word he said was being recorded not only on her cell phone, but in some kind of infinitely more accurate and relentless database. "What's your name, kid?" Patricia asked in that same calm voice. Why do you want to know? Are you going to call the police? Tyler laughed, but there was something about the question that bothered him. Tyler Morrison. So what? Tyler Morrison, she repeated, as if memorizing each syllable. State University, from what I can see on your t-shirt. Football team, considering your posture and the mouthguard in your pocket. Approximately 19 years old, probably driving that red Mustang parked in 2 spots outside, the only one with a fraternity sticker. The accuracy startled Tyler for a moment, but his youthful arrogance quickly masked any apprehension. Wow, what a detective, he scoffed. Sherlock Holmes with a cane. What Tyler didn't know was that he was dealing with someone whose entire career had been built on the ability to assess threats, gather intelligence, and neutralize targets with surgical precision. Patricia Williams had coordinated operations that removed dictators from power, orchestrated rescue missions in hostile territories, and developed strategies that saved thousands of civilian lives. Do you have family here in town, Tyler? Patricia asked, carefully folding a used napkin. What are you getting at, weird old lady? But there was something about the way she asked these questions that was starting to really bother Tyler. It was as if each answer was being filed away for future use. Other McDonald's customers watched the scene with the typical cowardice of those who prefer to pretend they don't see injustice happening right in front of them. A mother pulled her children away, an elderly couple lowered their eyes, and even the employees seemed reluctant to intervene against a group of noisy college students. Tyler noticed the audience and decided to intensify the show. Hey everyone, are you seeing this? He said to the other customers, gesturing theatrically. This military grandma here is trying to interrogate me like she's some kind of officer. He turned to Patricia with a cruel smile. Newsflash, ma'am, you're not in charge of anyone anymore. You're just a regular old lady with wet paperwork. Patricia finished organizing the documents she could save and carefully placed them in a plastic folder. Her movements remained precise, almost ritualistic, as if each action were part of a larger protocol that Tyler couldn't comprehend. Tyler Morrison, she said again, this time writing something down in a small notebook she took out of her purse. Very well. I think our conversation here has been quite enlightening. Oh lady, are you threatening me? Tyler laughed, but there was a note of nervousness in his voice. What are you going to do? Give me a military scolding. Patricia closed the notebook and put it back in her purse with the same military precision. Young man, she said, slowly rising from the table, you've just given me a very valuable lesson about who you really are. And now, she smiled in that way that made the entire restaurant fall silent again, I'm going to return the favor. As Patricia calmly made her way to the exit, Tyler tried to mask his growing discomfort with more bravado for the camera. Did you see that, guys? The military grandma ran away when things got serious. But something about the way she had written down his name, the precision with which she had catalogued every detail about him, the absolute calm with which she had absorbed every insult, made Tyler feel that he had just awakened something much bigger and more dangerous than his college mind could process. What Tyler Morrison had no idea was that he had just become the target of a psychological operation conducted by someone who had spent decades perfecting the art of destroying enemies by using precisely their own arrogance and weaknesses against them. 3 hours after the incident at McDonald's, Tyler was at his fraternity celebrating his victory, as if he had won a military medal. The video he had recorded was already circulating on the university's WhatsApp groups with the title trolling a senior at McDonald's epic fail. Dude, did you see the old lady's face when you spilled the Coke on her? Brandon laughed, passing Tyler a beer. She was like, frozen. I bet she still can't believe someone had the guts to put her in her place. Tyler watched the video for the 10th time, feeling that empty satisfaction of someone who confuses cruelty with courage. Man, these veterans think they deserve respect just because someone said they fought in some war. Like, okay, cool, but that doesn't give you the right to take up space that isn't yours. What Tyler didn't know was that while he was celebrating his youthful achievement, Patricia Williams was sitting in her modest apartment doing exactly what she had perfected during decades of military operations, gathering intelligence on the enemy. Her laptop was open to multiple tabs. Tyler Morrison's social media, Instagram with 2,400 followers, mostly college friends. Public Facebook showing parties, football games, and the typical arrogance of someone who has never had to fight for anything in life. Tyler Morrison, 19, son of Richard Morrison, owner of 3 car dealerships in the area. But the real intelligence came when Patricia called Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Thompson, her former subordinate who now worked as a digital security specialist for the FBI. "General Williams," Marcus said with that genuine respect that only those who had served under her could express, "when I heard you had called, I almost couldn't believe it. How can I help you?" Patricia smiled. For 15 years, Marcus had been her most competent intelligence officer. If anyone was capable of gathering comprehensive information on Tyler Morrison in a matter of hours, it was him. "Marcus, I need you to do me an unofficial favor. Nothing illegal, just well-organized public information." "Go ahead, General." Tyler Morrison, 19, student at State University. "I want to know everything: academic history, disciplinary records, online activity for the last 6 months, and especially anything about his behavior on social media that might indicate a pattern of prejudice or aggression." Marcus asked no questions. During years of military operations, he had learned that when General Williams requested intelligence, it was because she was planning a strategy that would be simultaneously precise, devastating, and completely justifiable. "How much time do you have?" 48 hours. "Considering it's for you, I'll have it in 24. Meanwhile, Tyler continued to intensify his campaign of humiliation. The McDonald's video wasn't enough. He created an Instagram story showing the defeated veteran, and added the song "Another One Bites the Dust" as the soundtrack. In the comments he wrote, "When you put SJWs in their place, face with tears of joy, #veteran trolled, #respect is earned." The post quickly garnered likes and comments from his fraternity friends. "Tyler legend, based king. These veteran feminists think they're special," his followers wrote, further feeding his inflated ego. Patricia watched everything from her apartment, cataloging every post, every comment, every public display of prejudice and arrogance. It was like watching an enemy placing explosives around his own position, completely oblivious to the fact that he was providing all the ammunition necessary for his own destruction. The next morning, Tyler decided to escalate even further. During a class on diversity and inclusion, ironically mandatory for all students, he raised his hand and asked, with a provocative smile, "Professor, what about when veterans use their military status to gain privileges they don't deserve? Like, taking up space that could be useful for more productive people?" The room fell silent. Professor Davis, a 45-year-old black man, asked calmly, "Could you be more specific about what kind of privileges you are referring to, Mr. Morrison?" Tyler, encouraged by the attention, decided to elaborate. "Like yesterday, there was a veteran at McDonald's occupying 2 tables just because she thought she deserved it. When someone told her to make room, she tried to intimidate everyone with this respect the veterans thing. As if going to war gave her this special right to bother everyone." Several students looked at each other, uncomfortable with the direction of the discussion. A young woman named Jessica raised her hand. "Tyler, don't you think veterans have really sacrificed a lot for the country and deserve our respect?" "Sacrificed?" Tyler laughed loudly. "Jessica, half of these veterans enlist because they're not competent enough to do anything useful in civilian life. Then they use it as a crutch forever." What Tyler didn't know was that Jessica had discreetly recorded the comment on her cell phone and, after class, posted it in the college study group with the caption, "I can't believe people like this study at our university." While Tyler continued digging his own digital grave, Patricia received a call from Marcus. "General, I have the information you requested. And I must say," he paused significantly, "the material is quite enlightening. Can you send me a summary now?" Tyler Morrison has an extensive history of problematic behavior. 3 formal complaints of bullying in high school, 2 disciplinary warnings at university for inappropriate conduct during social events, and Marcus hesitated. General, his social media posts from the last few months are a goldmine. Prejudiced comments about the military, women, minorities. It's all documented. Patricia smiled in that way that had intimidated dictators at negotiating tables. "Marcus, do you still have contacts in the military press?" "Yes, General. Several." "And do you know journalists who cover veterans' issues?" "Of course." "Great. I want you to prepare a complete dossier on Tyler Morrison. All posts, all comments, all evidence of a systematic pattern of prejudice against veterans. But don't publish anything yet. It's not time." "Understood, General. May I ask what the plan is?" Patricia looked at the uniform hanging in her closet, the 4 stars shining even in the dim light of the apartment. Marcus, in my 40-year career, I've learned that the best an arrogant enemy is to let him expose himself completely before attacking. Tyler Morrison thinks he's winning a war that hasn't even started yet. And when does it start, General? When I'm sure that the counterattack will be so complete and devastating that he'll never recover. And considering the pace at which he's sabotaging himself, Patricia paused, watching another humiliating story Tyler had posted, I don't think it will be long. Because there is a fundamental difference between provoking a 60-year-old woman at McDonald's and awakening a 4-star general who has spent her entire life turning complex strategies into decisive victories. Tyler Morrison was about to discover that difference in the most public and humiliating way possible. As he celebrated his petty cruelties as great victories, he had no idea that every post, every comment, every display of prejudice was being carefully catalogued by someone who had orchestrated the defeat of enemies far more dangerous and intelligent than a spoiled college student with a superiority complex. 48 hours after the incident at McDonald's, Tyler woke up to his phone exploding with notifications. 53 unread messages, dozens of tags on Instagram, and missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize. Still sleepy, he opened the first link he had received. Young college student humiliates black 4-star veteran in restaurant, videos go viral. Tyler's blood ran cold. The article on Veterans Today, the country's largest military news portal, wasn't just about the incident at McDonald's. It was a complete dossier of his digital life, screenshots of all his prejudiced posts, the video of the class where he disparaged veterans, offensive comments he had made about the military, women and minorities over the past 2 years. But what really terrified him was the photo that opened the article. General Patricia Williams, in full military uniform, with her 4 stars clearly visible, accompanied by a caption that made his legs tremble. Retired General Patricia Williams, first black woman to reach 4 stars, 35-year veteran, responsible for operations that saved thousands of civilian lives. No, no, no. Tyler muttered, frantically scrolling through the article. Each paragraph was a nuclear bomb on his reputation. The military journalist had done a meticulous job, connecting each of Tyler's offensive posts with official statements about respect for veterans, counterbalancing his youthful arrogance with the extraordinary achievements of Patricia Williams. His cell phone rang. It was his father, Richard Morrison. Tyler, you imbecile, do you have any idea what you've done? His father's voice was charged with a fury he had never heard before. My company is being bombarded with calls. Clients are canceling contracts. You humiliated a 4-star general, Tyler. Do you have any idea how serious this is? Dad, I didn't know she was. You didn't know, Richard shouted. Tyler, this isn't about what you knew. It's about who you are. These posts, these comments, this pattern of prejudice you've been displaying for years. Tyler realized with horror that his own parents had read everything. Every offensive comment, every display of arrogance, every piece of evidence that he had been raised to be a young man with fundamentally flawed values. At 10:30 a.m., Tyler received an official call from the state university. Dean Patricia Henderson, what a cruel irony of names, he thought, informed him that he was suspended pending a full investigation into conduct incompatible with institutional values. His scholarship was cancelled immediately. But this is just a misunderstanding, Tyler stammered. Mr. Morrison, the dean's voice was icy. We have recordings of your statements in class, we have your public posts, and we have evidence of a systematic pattern of discriminatory behavior. This is not a misunderstanding. It is who you have chosen to be. At 11:15 a.m., Tyler's fraternity posted an official statement completely disassociating itself from him. The Delta Sigma fraternity does not tolerate any form of discrimination against veterans, minorities, or any member of our community. Tyler Morrison does not represent our values and is permanently banned from all activities. At 12:30 p.m., Tyler discovered that the original video he had recorded at McDonald's was being used by General Williams herself in a national campaign against bullying veterans. She had turned his cruel humiliation into an educational tool, publicly demonstrating how to respond to prejudice with dignity and effective strategic action. But the coup de grace came at 2 p.m., when Tyler received an email from a military law firm. General Williams had filed a civil suit for defamation, using every post, every comment, every piece of digital evidence Tyler had created against himself over 2 years. The email attachment contained a statement that made Tyler sit down on the floor of his dorm room. General Patricia Williams has served in 3 war zones, commanded over 50,000 soldiers, coordinated humanitarian operations that saved 200,000 civilians, and received 15 awards for valor and leadership. Her contribution to national defense is invaluable. Mr. Morrison's defamatory comments constitute clear slander against a high-ranking officer. Tyler desperately tried to delete his posts, but it was too late. Everything had been archived, printed, catalogued. Every piece of evidence of prejudice he had produced over the years was being systematically used against him by someone who had spent decades perfecting psychological warfare strategies. At 4 p.m., Tyler made the call he hoped he would never have to make. "General Williams, please, I wanted to apologize." "Mr. Morrison," Patricia's voice was calm, professional, devastating. "Your apology has come too late. You had 48 hours to reflect on your actions and chose to escalate them. You posted 3 additional stories ridiculing me, made derogatory comments in class, and demonstrated that your behavior was not an isolated mistake, but a systematic expression of who you really are. But I can change. I can learn." Tyler, during my 35-year military career, I learned the difference between people who make mistakes and people who are the mistake. You didn't disrespect me by accident. You disrespected me because you saw a 60-year-old black woman and assumed you could do so with impunity. Patricia paused for what seemed like an eternity. "The difference between us, Tyler, is that I've spent my entire life protecting the rights of people like you to be prejudiced. Now, I'm going to use those same rights to ensure that your actions have the appropriate consequences." Tyler hung up the phone, his hands shaking. He looked around the college dorm room that would soon no longer be his, at the football trophies that no longer meant anything, at the privileged life that had imploded in less than 3 days. What Tyler Morrison couldn't understand was that he had completely underestimated not just a woman, not just a veteran, not just a general, but a strategist who had dedicated her entire life to turning seemingly minor threats into lasting lessons about respect, consequences, and the fundamental difference between real power and empty arrogance. As Tyler faced the realization that he had destroyed his own future with his own hands, one last question echoed in his terrified mind. If a simple Coke spilled on an old lady could result in the systematic destruction of everything he valued, what else had he missed about the real power of the people he had spent his entire life underestimating? 6 months after the incident at McDonald's, Tyler Morrison was working as a pizza delivery driver, driving a 2010 Civic borrowed from his parents after the Mustang was sold to pay for the legal fees. His suspension from college had become a permanent expulsion when further investigations revealed a 3-year pattern of discriminatory behavior. His attempt to transfer to other universities failed when General Williams' file became an academic reference on digital consequences of systematic prejudice. The name Tyler Morrison was permanently associated with a case study on how privilege and arrogance can destroy a promising future in a matter of days. The fraternity had not only banned him, but had created a mandatory educational program on respect for veterans, using his own case as an example of what not to do. Richard Morrison, his father, lost 2 major contracts with companies that had veterans in executive positions, forcing him to sell one of his dealerships. Meanwhile, General Patricia Williams had become one of the most respected voices in the national veterans' rights movement. Her calculated and devastatingly effective response to Tyler's prejudice was studied in military schools as a perfect example of defensive psychological operations. The McDonald's on Interstate 75 now displayed a discreet sign, "Veteran-friendly establishment. We respect those who served." The Latina manager had been promoted to regional supervisor after implementing a diversity training program that became a model for the national chain. Marcus Thompson, Patricia's former subordinate at the FBI, visited regularly for lunch and always greeted her with proper military respect. "General," he said during one meeting, "Mr. Tyler Morrison has attempted to sue you for excessive retaliation." Patricia smiled as she organized new medical documents, this time from her own life insurance, which had increased significantly after her inspirational lectures gained national recognition. And how did it end? The judge dismissed the case in 15 minutes. He said that natural consequences of public actions do not constitute retaliation, but education. The boy's lawyer didn't even try to appeal. Tyler had desperately tried to rebuild his online image, creating posts about personal growth and learning from mistakes. But every employer, every university, every relationship opportunity inevitably encountered the case that had become a digital legend about how not to treat veterans. The last time Patricia saw him was during one of her lectures at the local community college on leadership after service. Tyler was in the back of the auditorium, clearly trying to go unnoticed. During the question and answer session, He raised his hand hesitantly. "General," he said in a voice that carried 6 months of real consequences, "as someone who made a terrible mistake, how can I truly demonstrate that I've learned?" Patricia watched him for a long moment, seeing no longer the arrogant young man who had spilled Coke on her documents, but someone who finally understood the real weight of his actions. "Tyler," she said, using his name for the first time without hostility, "real change doesn't happen in motivational posts or public apologies. It happens when you spend years rebuilding your character through consistent actions that demonstrate genuine respect for people you don't need to impress." The audience fell silent, witnessing a rare moment of possible redemption after justice had been served. Start by helping veterans without expecting recognition. Work in shelters, volunteer at military hospitals, truly learn about sacrifice instead of assuming you know. Patricia paused. "And remember, respect isn't something you give when it suits you. It's something you carry as a principle, regardless of who's watching." Tyler nodded, tears apparent, finally understanding the difference between real remorse and mere inconvenience at having been caught. Today, General Patricia Williams continues to turn moments of prejudice into educational opportunities, proving that the best revenge is not to destroy your enemy, but to use their own ignorance to build a more respectful and just world. Tyler Morrison learned the hard way that underestimating veterans, especially those who have spent decades perfecting winning strategies, results in consequences that extend far beyond simple embarrassment. He discovered that some lessons can only be taught through the full experience of the consequences of our choices. True justice is not just punishing prejudice, but transforming it into education that protects future victims. If this story of respect, consequences, and redemption touched you, subscribe to the channel for more narratives that prove that dignity and strategy always win over arrogance and privilege.